right, aloha and welcome. Hope everyone's having a good day. Today, our guest is a multi-award winner, and she's also been on the Yuka magazine cover. Welcome, Victoria Box.
Hello.
How's everything been?
Things have been good. I'm sure everyone has had their pandemic quarantine stories and experiences. But I think overall, you just have to roll with the punches. And that's what Jack and I have been doing for the past year and hanging in there. We're waiting for our vaccine.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And you guys have been playing together for how long now? Is it a
Well,
duo?
as well, we got married just about 5 years ago. And so it's been a slow kind of duo in the making as far as over the years and writing music together and performing. But this year, being stuck at home together has kind of like catapulted into Jack in the Vox mode because we're here together. And, I love playing with him, and he's a great guitarist. And, we swap on bass and trade solos and write new songs, and it just keeps us busy. And so we figured, why not get through this together?
Yeah, no, that's good. And you guys really complement each other. But was it music first or love first?
It was music. Jack and I actually met at the Berklee College of Music in Boston,
Okay,
and
okay.
back in 1998. Although I did find a journal entry though that I did gush about him um, back then, but I was like, I don't know if he likes me. It's because I don't act like I like him, and I can't act like I like him because all my friends like him, and so I'm not gonna act like it. So, but how do I know? And how I thought we'd be really great together, just even as on a companion level. And fast forward like 11 years, we ran into each other at the NAM show, exchanged numbers, but it just wasn't the right time for either of us. And then we ran into each other again in January 2016, and then we were married like 2 months later.
Wow. That really seemed like it was meant to be. If you guys ran into each other, all that, and knew each other from that, what was that, like in the, was it late 90s?
Yeah, we were always just the buddies. Like our friends would hang out and we would hang out, and my roommate like Jack, and then his best friend like me, and so it was like we were always just like chums. And but then when we in 2016, we after NAM, we decided to just go out and grab a beer and catch up because it's been like forever. And we ended up later back at his place. I plopped down at the piano. He had a ukulele. He gets out his guitar. We just start jamming on a song that he had just started writing. And we just, 10 minutes of playing, and it's like, bring. And then he's like, will you marry me? And we hadn't even kissed yet.
Whoa.
No, I mean,
Like a movie.
I had no idea. It completely blindsided me. And I thought about it for like a split second, and I'm thinking, like, I just had the most wonderful time. Like, yes. And then he fell out of his chair, and then that was that.
Well, that's how it's done. And I
But
love I love your guys' name too, Jack in the Box, right?
in the box, yeah, that just kind of happened to be. But out, so I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin, but I was living in Baltimore, Maryland, in the Mid Atlantic area, and we don't have Jack in the Box fast food chains out east. So it's always like out west. So whenever I see like, oh, Jack in the Box, and then when we got together and I'd come out here and visit, it was just like, oh, Jack in the Box. And they're like, oh, Jack in the Box. Not in the Box, but and the Box.
Yeah, yeah. I like, yeah, it's such a, when I saw that name, I was like, oh wow. That's clever. I like that.
You have fun with it. And yeah, it's fun for us.
I think when you get to share your passion with your significant other, I think that's really really great, and a lot of people don't get to experience that. So that's pretty cool. You and Jack get to do that together.
Yeah, and it's a musical compromise too. It's where we both have our own projects and what Victoria Vox is, and the kind of music I like to do and what I would do as a solo artist is different than what we do as a duo. And same with Jack and his band called Feed the Kitty. He's like kind of country rock, and so then we kind of find this like middle ground of like Americana folk pop a little whimsical at times.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of we've been working on kind of our own repertoire
Nice.
of mostly originals that we do as a duo. So we kind of have like three separate musical acts between the two of us.
Oh wow, that's a lot. Do you guys have any albums out?
We've been working on one for a while. We recorded somewhat of a demo acoustic tracks here last year that's available at jackinthevox.com.
Okay.
But we haven't released a lot out to the masses on the like streaming and the internet yet.
Hmm.
I think part of it's being perfectionist and that I'm like basically recording and mixing and mastering myself. So it definitely has like a lo-fi, like homemade flavor.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
But so I would like it to sound a little more pro, but we'll get there. So
Yeah,
we're still working on it, mostly the recording.
yeah, and that's the thing with us artists is that sometimes, even for me, it's like if I'm not completely happy with it, it's just like sometimes it might not even get done because it's like, what can you do better? And then when you listen to it back, it's just like, oh, I should have played a different chord, or I should have approached the phrasing differently. It's so it's
Yeah,
hard.
hang-ups we have as artists, but I think, some of my favorite recordings as a listener are the ones that are just like they didn't even tune or something. Like it's just like it was like on the fly or it was just kind of like, yeah, let's get this down and then that ends up being the recording because
Sometimes those are the most authentic ones.
they weren't trying and it was just capturing a moment and that's basically what a recording is. It's just a moment in that at that time. But yeah, it is hard, because you have to live with it forever.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And well, hopefully we'll get to hear your guys' quarantine sessions new album whenever it's coming out. But yeah, you've I was just taking a look at your resume and you're very, very impressive. You've achieved so much within the past decade or two. But let's take a little flashback to the like growing up, and you had told me before that you spent was it a few years in France?
I lived there for a year. When I
Okay.
was a junior in high school, so I was a foreign exchange student, and so in high school decided to live with another family for a year and learn the French language.
Wow, that hard?
It was a wonderful experience, and I think being a musician, we have a skill set of hearing something and then repeating. So if
Hmm.
someone says sing ba, you're like ba, and it's like you hear something and you can spit it out. And so I think language is a lot like that. When you hear how it's supposed to sound, like you're not saying bonjour. It's like they say bonjour, and so you're like, oh, bonjour. Oh, that's not French.
Yeah. I think that's why it's easier to sing in a different language than it is to speak.
And so
You can
yeah,
hear.
it is. And so when I speak French, I don't think of it as I'm translating word for word of what I'm saying. I think of how would that phrase sound as a whole phrase.
Hmm.
And
That's true.
and so yeah, it's kind of like song like it's a lyric. Like how
Wow,
would you
that's a good way. That's a good way to think of it because I think a lot of people get overwhelmed who are like kind of like almost bilingual. But yeah, that's just a way that's a good way to look at it because when sometimes you hear people sing a song and it sounds so authentic, but at the same time they don't understand a word they're saying.
and I think I've learned a Cuban song that way, Chan Chan by Compay Segundo, and I have no idea what I'm saying, but I think it's just a matter of hearing the sound and being able to replicate that. Uh, but yeah, language. I think musicians especially are probably good at speaking another language. I mean, music
Huh.
is another language.
Right, right. That's why I've never thought of it that way. I mean, because for me, I mean, like I took Japanese in high school, but maybe that's why like I kind of took to it a little easier.
Your ear
Interesting.
is, skilled.
Right, right, right. Oh, totally. And and I know that you studied at Berkeley, but I'm just curious, when did you pick up or start pick up an instrument or start like learning music as a kid?
Well, I call myself a glorified band geek.
Okay.
But I very young. I think even like at 4, I have cassette tapes of my mother singing with my sister, and I would, they would start singing a song like Jesus loves me, like whatever song, and I would get so mad if they started without me. I'd be like, stop, and I'm on the cassette tape, like stop singing, stop, wait for me, and so I just love, but I loved singing. I think that was always um, my passion. And so even at 6, I decided I was going to be a singer.
Wow.
I had no idea how I was going to do that. I came from a really small town in Wisconsin of about 2,000 people at the time. And there wasn't an outlet for a, a child who's like, I'm going to be a singer
Hmm.
at the country club.
I mean, that's cool that I mean, you just had the vision for that at that, and that's a young age.
And I think ultimately it wasn't so much that I wanted to be a singer, but I loved how music made me feel.
Hmm.
Listen to music, we had the radio on all the time, and my parents weren't particularly musical. They don't play instruments, but we just always had music on a lot of the time, and I just loved the it just made me feel something in the lyrics. And so I'd be on the swing set swinging and thinking like whatever song that Tina Turner sang or Michael Jackson, and I'm thinking like, well, these are like somebody just made these songs up. Why can't I just make up my own songs? And so I would just
Oh.
singing on the swing set, making up my own songs. And then I think I was 9. I was in 3rd grade, and my teacher, we were studying music. There was like a music section in our reading class book about
Okay.
music instruments. And so she brought in her violin, and she let each of us go up one by one and pull the bow across the strings. And I went up and pulled the bow across, and I was like, I want to do that. And for me, it was something that was more real than singing because I was born with that, but it was like, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. So I begged for violin lessons. I took violin lessons for 9 years. Was never very good, but it turns out my instrument was the part of the problem. I wish I had known. I mean, but anyways, I'm sure my teacher had suggested at some point to get a better instrument, but we were like, no, this is a grandfather's violin. And so it kind of had a bowed neck and had a horrible tone. So no matter how much I would practice, it just sounded awful. But then I joined the band in 5th grade at 11, and so I played oboe, and then
Mm.
state band for oboe. And then I got to high school, and then they were short on trumpet players, so they asked if I would move to the brass section, and then that got me into jazz band. And then hearing songs with the singing and the lyrics and these jazz standards, and we'd go to do these we have solo ensemble in Wisconsin. I don't know if you guys have that in Hawaii. It's called solo ensemble, and
Okay.
it's kind of like a music competition. So you perform a solo or like a woodwind choir or maybe like a brass duet. And so it was at that competition that I saw that people were competing for singing. And
Mm.
oh, I want to sing. Like I was doing violin solo, trumpet, oboe, woodwind choir, brass choir, jazz band. I would have, like 8 or 9 different things I was competing for, but not voice. And so I went to the choir teacher and I said, I want to do a vocal solo too. And they're like, well, you're not in choir. so
Oh.
I pushed and I said, no, I'm gonna do a solo and I'm gonna go to state and I'm gonna get a first place. And so I had to fight a little bit, but eventually they gave me the class A solo so I could go to, possibly go to state. And I ended
Mm.
up going to state and getting a first.
Oh, really? Wow. I
And
mean,
then I started guitar when I was 17 and was inspired by, other female singer songwriters that I would hear about. And That got me a little bit more into. I moved from songwriting from the keyboard at 10 to like the guitar, so I was more. It definitely brought the instrument closer to my body, which I think gave a little bit more of an emotional edge to what I was singing. I think it was more of a feeling. But yeah, and then I ended up at Berkeley somehow.
Wow. So just like growing up, it just seemed like you were just destined to play music. I mean, from swinging on the swings to playing all these instruments, like your
I
musical background is pretty.
magnet to like whatever musician. If there was somebody, if we were out to dinner and there was a piano player in the corner, I'd be like on the piano, just like staring at the guy, and he's thinking like, oh my gosh, who is this kid?
Dang.
And he's like,
And
do you want to sing something? And I'd be like, yeah. And they're like, what do you want to sing? I'm like, I don't know. Like I didn't know any songs, like because I was making up my own all the time.
do,
Till
do
the
you think, wow. So do you think to a degree, like as a kid and growing, do you think you process music differently from like someone who doesn't play music?
I don't know if I process it differently. I think I just had a real emotional connection to it. I'm by far not by any means a virtuoso or a prodigy as far as like understanding music or seeing colors. It's
Oh, wow.
you know
Colors.
more of like I like this or like it's
Hmm.
like I this I feel something from this, and it was just wanting to be a part of that, wanting to create that, and just feel it all the time. And singing also, I think when babies make little cooing sounds and start, whether it's crying or whatever, but when they're just making noises, you feel this like vibration in your chest, like when you're talking or singing. But singing can be very soothing, I feel. And I think there's something about that was almost therapeutic about singing, that it just, if I was having a bad day, if I just started singing, it was just this vibration, and it just kind of makes all the pain go away or whatever, or the sadness, or just you can't,
Hmm.
you like literally physically felt it as well.
Yeah, I think you literally just live and breathe music, and I think that's so great. Just to have that passion and to pursue that passion over your life. That's really awesome to hear. And then so going on to Berkeley, like, how was that experience just being around people with the same passion and the mindset like you have?
It was incredible. It was like everything I could have dreamed of. As far, it's just kind of like show up day one and you're just like, wow, like everybody's like into it like I am.
I I know I've thought about it. I was like, wow, like it just I mean, obviously to like, to go down a path to learn something, but also just to be around the minds, and just being able to like communicate just in a musical way. And I always thought it would be just like so cool just to experience it.
Yeah, they say you eat, sleep, and breathe music at Berkeley, and you're just around it all the time. Whether you're in the elevator and it's like the thing goes ding, and everyone's like ding, 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 and they just start like doing a little song and dance.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
Like a car horns in the distance, and then everyone's like, and making like jazz chords.
yeah. And then I think I read somewhere it's like the only crowd that would like clap in time with music. That's great. And
But yeah, it was just a great experience, and I think it was also really hard, because I wasn't a musical genius by any means. I barely understood music theory. Like
oh, okay.
I was kind of like, okay, so if I'm putting a circle on the bottom line, then I'm gonna skip the gap and then put a circle on the next line. Like it was more visual than like actually understanding what was going on. I was kind
Hmm.
of a bloomer as far as theory goes. But there were so many talented kids there, and everybody was so great.
Hmm.
Bass players, guitarists, drummers, vocalists. I mean, this is the like the best of the best, and I would often kind of felt just like, what the heck am I doing here?
Dang, that must have been.
I had to kind of go through um, college with blinders on in a way of I would go to my classes. I kind of understood what they were teaching in the class. I would prove that I was understanding the material, but I was always kind of doing my own thing on the side. And but you had to just kind of take the the knowledge that they're not holding your hand through it. They kind of say, here's a toolbox, do with it what you will. And at the time I just kind of thought, well, this is what I'm understanding, and this is how I can apply it to what I'm doing right now. And it wasn't until like 4 years after I graduated where all of a sudden I was like, oh, like I've got all these tools, or like I could do, it's kind of, it just took me a little longer. But you have these kids that are just the best of the best from these towns all over the world, and it can be emotionally hard to, it's think this was pre-internet really, and pre
Hmm.
Instagram and Facebook, and so we were just there on campus, but you could compare yourself to the 10 other brilliant singers in the room, and I was not one of them.
Hmm.
And so it was inspiring, it was humbling
A
of
little
like,
intimidating.
I got work to do. I would go to parties every now and then, and everyone getting high or drunk, and I would always have these thoughts of like, I should be home practicing right now because this is my chance to get ahead. While they're all screwing off, like this is my chance.
Oh,
And I think I just kept working at it. I never gave up. And still, and I still have a lot to learn, and but I know what I like, and I just do what I like and do what feels good, sounds good to me.
yeah. And for you listeners out there who are, either struggling learning or just in a place, just remember, just like Victoria just said, just don't give up, because persistence is probably one of the most important keys to success. And look at what happened in your career since then. So that's just really cool to hear that, that it didn't come natural. It didn't, it wasn't like spoon fed to me. I had to really just dig deep and acquire it. And yeah, being around like just everyone with that mindset must have been like, in a way, kind of like, it lit a fire under you, kind of intimidating at the same time.
Actually, it's the best way to learn, in the same way that learning French, going to France to totally immerse myself in that language and culture, I picked it up a lot faster. In the same way, like going to Berkeley, or a school like Berkeley, or just even if you don't go to college, hang out with other musicians, because they're gonna play something, and you'll be like, whoa, like what's that? And I'll be like, show me, and then they'll be like, and for the most part, any musician I can think of has been like totally awesome with, like, whenever I would say, hey, what's that chord, or how'd you play that, or what, and musicians are very open and sharing and say, oh, this is what I'm doing, or this is the shape I'm playing, or this is, and I remember learning on my guitar at Berkeley, someone was like, here's an E major 7 with a double third. So I wrote a song using this E major 7 with a double third chord.
Oh, really?
And I probably had no idea what that really meant at the time, but I could play it. And even Jack, when we're in these doing these daily shows, and for the pandemic shows, we'll be learning tunes, and I'll be like, oh, how do you play that riff on the bass, Jack? And I'll have Jack show me how to play it, or just kind of play it slow. Hey, can you slow it down so I can get it? And but like Kimo Hussey was one very early on in my ukulele playing days, who in 2006 saw me play in San Diego. And after the show, he just took me aside and he's like, hey, Victoria, I want to show you something. And he just showed me like this little double strum. And he's just like, just get this, just doing this little circle kind of with my finger and thumb. And he's just like, I just want to show you that. Like, not condescending, not saying like you need to do this, just I want to show you something.
Hmm.
I use that all the time, you
Yeah,
know.
that's his signature thing is the thumb and the index finger.
Yeah, and it was just like, he just kind of, so you just learn so much from other musicians. So yeah, hang out with as many musicians as you can and ask questions. There's no stupid questions. And even being at the ukulele festivals really early on in my ukulele playing days, James Hill and Casey McGill, and you know, I'd be like half the songs I've never even heard of, like
Yeah.
Avalon. And I'm like, what are the like? What are you playing? And Casey would be like, showing me this his little chord changes, and Lyle Ritz was another one who sat down with me and went over Don't Get Around Much Anymore and showed me a couple things, little tricks that he would do, and I just feel like, it's just really cool that
Yeah,
every
you're hanging out with all the big names in the ukulele world. That must have been so exciting and just very helpful. But I'm just curious, how did you acquire just the ukulele in your life?
Well, it actually came into my life twice, and it wasn't until the second time that I took it seriously. The first time was while I was at Berkeley and driving from Boston to Green Bay in a U-Haul van with my band to go back and record my first album. And another guy who was from Green Bay was super into the Beatles. His name's Bob Perrins. He's a fabulous musician, also from Berkeley, and but he would walk around campus playing a little like Martin ukulele, but then make up kind of these funny perverted songs. And so I always thought of it as like this funny thing. And so he hitched a ride with us, and we were stopped at a gas station in Canada. And I just thought, I'm like, hey, Bob, could I try that? Could I try your uke? And so I had played a little bit of bass, and so I was thinking the other four, like I was thinking the bass four strings, so I wasn't really understanding that it was the like the upper pitched four strings of a guitar, like you could play a D
Hmm.
as a G chord. I wasn't understanding any of that, so I kind of handed it back a bit discouraged, and but I had a thought. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if somebody just took the ukulele and just made like real songs with it, like just real music, like not funny, not comedy, not, just like real songs.
Hmm.
Completely forgot about it. 3 years later, I was in France and a teacher was looking for different versions of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and came across the Finding Forrester album, and she shared it with me. She's like, Victoria, you got to hear this song. And it was like Israel, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't even say his name. I'm like, I never heard of him. I'm like, I didn't even know it was a ukulele. Like, I just, was his voice and just the song, like, it was just, it haunted me. And so I came back home and like I bought the Finding Forrester soundtrack on CD and took my guitar and put the capo on the fifth fret, chinkin, a chinkin, a chinkin, just would play along with Iz until I learned the song. And then I got a call one night from a musician friend who was playing a private party across town, and they had finished playing, but the guests wanted more music. So they called me to be like, hey, Victoria, get over here. Will you play some music for these people? And I started playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And my friend Dale, who was about 40 years older than I am, he comes out playing with me on a ukulele. And I was like, what, Dale? You have a ukulele? He's like, yeah, and you need to play this song on one. And so he gave me one of his vintage ukuleles, and I went to his house and he had 29 vintage ukuleles hanging up on a wall. And he just grabbed one. It said Duke Hanamoku on it and had a toothpick for a saddle. And I just, it was kind of after, at that moment, I'm like, okay, I need to learn how to play this thing. So I bought like Jim Beloff's beginner ukulele book, and just kind of went from there.
That's a classic
At the
one.
gym,
Mm.
and yeah, it was it just kind of took a few chords, and then I started writing songs before ever even learning other songs, playing them fully. It was just kind of, I grabbed a couple chords from like the Star Spangled Banner, and I
Okay.
was like, oh, my own song.
So, oh wow, so you that was your kind of your foundation was, like meeting Kimo Hasi for like, your maybe technique, and then you pick up the book and start learning from there, and then you
Well, I
started
was
kind
learning. So I had learned, I picked up that uke in 2003. And so I had been playing for 3 years, and I was performing at the San Diego Ukulele Festival. Um, so I guess timeline wise, I had learned, picked up the ukulele in 2003, started bringing it into my show. I like would play like 3 songs on the ukulele all night. Like I'd play guitar, sing, and like, hey, here's Ukulele Vic, and play a couple songs. And people would always ask me to play the ukulele again. They're like, I'd go back to guitar, and then they'd be like, oh, play the ukulele. And I'm like, I don't know any more songs.
Oh yeah, I mean, the ukulele just has something about it which people just I think they just gravitate towards.
I
But
think I find it to be a very hopeful instrument, and it's unassuming. It's kind of this underdog
yeah,
kind of instrument. It's not overpowering or overbearing. It doesn't cover up my voice at all. And so, yeah, it just has this really nice, fun, soothing sound that I think people just gravitate towards. And so I slowly started playing it a little bit more. And then people started asking, do you have a CD of ukulele music? I'm like, no. And so I eventually started basically writing more songs on the ukulele with an album in mind.
mm,
It was December 2005. I decided to go to Hawaii for the first time. A friend of mine worked my publicity, and we thought, where else would we go to release a ukulele album but Hawaii?
perfect place.
It was a very interesting experience. This was before I think Jake's YouTube had like just come out on
Mm,
his the While My Guitar Gently Weeps
right.
cover in Central Park. Like I remember seeing that, like it was like a week before we left, and I'm thinking like, oh God, I quit. And so we definitely marketed that album as, I'm a singer songwriter. I happen to pick up the ukulele. I'm not calling myself a ukulele player by any means. And I went and did like 12 shows in Honolulu, on Oahu and
Mm,
Maui. Yeah, Oahu and Maui. And some of the shows were like at the Westin Hotel, playing in the evening on the patio. you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
they'd pay me $125 a show, and then I'd pay $100 to stay at the hotel.
Dang, $25 for dinner.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, definitely not making any money. Uh,
Yeah.
but while I was there, it was that's where KoAloha discovered me, and they saw my picture in the paper, and they reached out, and they said, we hope no one's gotten to you yet. We want to sponsor you, and we love what you're doing, and we hear aloha in your music. And so that connection alone was really that was worth the entire trip.
Oh
And
yeah.
I went home with a pineapple sundae, and
Oh, okay.
it just was. And from that, it was like New York City Uke Fest just started, and so because I was on the KoAloha music page, all of a sudden these festivals that were in their inaugural years, they're emailing saying, "Hey, will you perform at this festival?" And so, kind of jumped in very early, and still felt like I didn't know what I was doing a lot of the time. Um, but yeah, then being alongside artists like James Hill and Kimo Hasi, and gosh, so many players over the early years, that had just watching them do their thing. And uh, it was really cool.
Awesome.
Very
Yeah,
fortunate.
Definitely. And I notice you have a lot of ukuleles on your wall. But what is your main one at the moment?
It kind of depends. Partly, it depends what I'm working on. Like today, we did our show, and so I played. So today's show, I played my motu, which is like this little.
Oh, is that
It's
like a Tahitian ukulele?
um no, it's just they're actually made in France.
Oh.
And it's cool. It has a little sound hole in the back, so you can do like you can get this kind of like wah
Oh,
sound
that's interesting.
stomach, and but it plugs in also. But it just has a real sharp. I love it for like older tunes. So today we did a couple songs from like the 40s. So I was like, oh yeah, this is the uke for that. The low G just doesn't quite do it for me on the song on the old tunes.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds very like yeah, like vintage ukulele.
But otherwise, usually I am a low G fan. I started playing low G probably like in 2010 or 11, and I just kind of never went back for a long time. Like now, I like both. I mean, I do like both, but probably my go-to ukulele is my Maya Moe, which I've
Okay.
had since 2013. It's one of four that I have, but this one in particular. And it's just it just depends on like what I travel on the road with a
Mm.
lot. You can just take one, if I'm driving I can take more, but I usually just end up playing one anyways. I do love the tiny tenor. I've been playing the tiny tenor by
Oh,
Romero.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. Pepe.
That's such a great uke. It sounds great, plays great, travels awesome. So I enjoy that uke. I've got a banjo lately there that I break out every now and then. It's pretty rare, but I do. It's fun. But yeah, between the Maya Moe and the Pepe Romero, those are kind of like my two ukes that I play.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've noticed because I've been a high G player my entire life until maybe like 2 years, 3 years ago. So now I have to take two ukuleles because now I've gotten into the low G. I never really appreciated it until recently, and I was like, wow, this is a whole new world for me. It's like I feel like I have new tools to work with, and it's just been so much fun. So I hate to say it, but the majority of my ukuleles is low G now.
Yeah, it's just it's how it is as musicians when we start incorporating a new instrument that we're like, oh, I have to bring two. It was like when I would detune my guitar and like do a dadgad or like an open E tuning.
Mm.
I would be like, well, I can't spend all day tuning, so I'm just gonna bring two guitars. And then it was like, I'm gonna bring a ukulele and a guitar. And then it was like, I had my high G, my low G, and my baritone. And so I was traveling with three ukuleles, boarding planes with three ukuleles.
That's a lot.
After a while, you just kind of start making the musical sacrifice of like, I'm just gonna take one. I'm gonna bring one uke and I'm gonna make the set work for that uke. And whether it's just it's a lot of lugging stuff around. It's
Yeah,
been here this year that we basically have free range of pick a uke, any uke.
that's
I will miss that when we hit the road again.
yeah. You're gonna have to choose one or two of your favorite ones, but at least one of your most iconic instruments. You don't have to carry it.
Yeah.
We have to bring it up. The iconic mouth trumpet, and it's something. This is something that I mean, I heard it from you for the first time, at Uke University. I was just like, wow, like do you like where'd you learn how to do that?
I in my car.
Really? And it's like it's legit. Like, I mean, if I turned away, I would think it's a real trumpet.
Thank you. I started mouth trumpeting in 2005, and I was in the car writing a song on the ukulele, driving at the same time. Don't do that anymore. But it was in a traffic jam, and but yeah, I was like, I need a little solo, and I'm not a I'm a rhythm player, And so for me to, rip a solo in the middle of my song just wasn't, um, going to happen. And I didn't want to just stand there and strum the chords and, you know, well, if somebody was here, they could take a solo. So I thought, well, what can I do with my voice that might emulate another instrument? And I thought, like, could I do like a guitar, like a wah, or like, you know, like a clarinet or something, and I just kind of took a deep breath and it's like, that'll work. And it definitely in the early, like, first 2 years of mouth trumpeting, it was funny at best. Definitely not honed in. And basically I would start writing horn solos so I could. It's Improv is a completely different beast than like knowing a melody. And so the same thing with mouth trumpeting. It's like if I knew exactly what notes I was going to sing, because it's singing, but
Yeah.
it's out of your mouth like a ventriloquist. I knew like I could hit those notes and I could really practice on the attack, the vibrato, the tone. And so I would spend a lot of time practicing with Chet Baker, and I would sing in the car and mouth trumpet to Chet Baker.
Dang. And it's hard enough for those who are into like improvisation. Improvisation is already hard, and the fact that like you do that with the mouth trumpet is insane.
Yeah, I'd say I'm probably I feel more confident just vocally improvising. The mouth trumpet is a way to do it without scatting or using kind of words.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it similar to scatting?
Very, yeah, very similar. And but obviously with the human voice can do glissando, so you can kind of really get loose with it. And
Mm.
mouth trumpet, with a horn, you have valves and you can bend into notes, but you're kind of on the note, like, so to do the valve sound, I might like, I have to retongue every note.
That's so
And so the improv definitely is harder, but I did play with a jazz band in Baltimore for a couple of years, and they would back me up at shows. And like I would do rehearsals with the bass player, upright bass player, and the pianist. But the trumpet player and the drummer would just like, they would just show up.
mm.
And like they would, especially the horn player, and Tim would just take these ripping solos, and I would just be like, "Oh my gosh!" And we would sometimes joke and have like a trumpet off. Obviously, it would blow me out of the water, but I just learned a lot from those guys of because they were so improv based, and it was getting comfortable to the point where you could take the risk.
Oh, I see.
Really, I mean, even if I am learning something, I can practice it a million times and be like, oh, I'm gonna do this solo up here, and I'm gonna do a little melodic thing. Put me on stage, I freak out, and I'm like, and I chicken out, and then I do it the easier way.
Yeah, it's hard to do that kind of stuff.
So I mean, I like full time, musicians that can just rip solos and play. Like I have so much respect, and I mean, there's so much talent and skill in that. Um, and so I'm still learning, but even with improv, it's kind of like you got to turn the brain off and just kind of trust your musicality.
Yeah, yeah.
And but just even learning how to relax and turn it off when you're live.
Mm.
It's challenging. It takes practice doing, and sometimes you have to trust, like, what you're doing. you know Go
Yeah.
and sit in, check. So what, you sing a wrong note, or you play, and the wrong notes become fewer and fewer the more you do it. And whether it's playing ukulele or vocalizing a solo, it's the same.
Yeah, and the thing is just like, yeah, like you said, don't give up, because sometimes we can get all discouraged if, like we keep hitting these wrong notes, but yes, it will become less and less.
And I think a lot of it too is just being comfortable with your instrument.
Hmm.
And so I guess because I'm a vocalist, first and foremost, I am a vocalist, and I am very comfortable with my voice and singing, and so it's more natural for me to be playful and go into improv mode vocally than it is. Even though I play the ukulele, I'm not rhythm wise, no problem, but I'm just, I'm not comfortable with, up and down the neck solos, scales. That's just not the kind of player I am. So for me to like just jump in and be like, I'm gonna take a solo, it's just kind of like, who are you kidding?
Yeah, no, no, it's just a completely different skill. Like, I mean, like I can't even sing. I mean, like, I have a really hard time with that. So it's just everyone just has their skills in different places. And sorry, I enjoyed that so much. Can you like play a couple bars with your mouth trumpet?
Oh sure. Here I'll give myself a little background music.
Yeah, yeah, there we go.
I will do. Let's see.
Good job. My gosh, it's
Me, I probably had no idea what I was doing.
hey,
But
that is just crazy. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, and I feel, for those who don't know, Victoria has actually helped me with my signature. We actually got a chance to work on it backstage. So, yeah, right there it is in its very first form. I hope it looks better now.
I don't remember what happened, but is that what you always did with your signature, or did I tell you that you needed to have a signature?
You sat me down. We're like, okay, we're gonna work on a signature. Like it was a serious talk. And I was like, okay, you're right, because I signed the first CD, and you're like, what is this?
I think this took you like a minute.
Oh, it took a while. I remember. I think I still have the paper somewhere where it has like the practice runs.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, thank you so much for donating your time. I know you're pretty busy, but it was very nice to catch up.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on here to chat, and it means a lot to me, and thank you. I love your playing. I look up to you as a musician, and so just thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, and before we go, we talked about this briefly, but you had told me that when you were going to Berkeley, you actually knew John Mayer,
Yeah.
who I'm a big fan of. I mean, it's not a secret, but so like, you just tell me more about that.
Well, he was actually one of the first people I met at school, and we were hanging out as freshmen. Everyone's kind of like, "Oh, where are you from? What do you play? What do you do?" And so we were kind of the two songwriters in the room. And so he's like, "Hey, let's go next door," and so we sat down cross-legged, facing each other with our guitars. And he's like, "You go first." And so I play my song, and I'm sure it was really bad. And then he played his song, and I'm just like, oh my God, this guy is so good.
Dang.
Like, this is so embarrassing. And then the second semester, he ended up moving down the hall from me. So he was always, it was like whether you're in the elevators, you're walking, I was in 720 and he was in 734. And, but my roommate was also good friends with that whole crew. And, yeah, so we just, would see each other often enough. And he ended up writing a song called Victoria about me coming by. I was looking for my roommate. But so
That's
that's
so funny, and I was telling you earlier that that's one of the records that I grew up with, and I do like that song. So I always wondered what it was about, but it's so funny that I know you. So there's just like it connects it together.
yeah, that's bait.
Oh, that's so funny. The Tory is the Tory that helped me with my signature. I'm very honored.
And so Jack calls me Tori all the time. And so if anyone tunes into our shows or comes to our shows, he'll be like Tori. And even though I'm Victoria Vox, he knows me as Tori because of that freshman year at school. Jack was a senior. And so he and John Mayer were very good friends. And it was just kind of this whole group of, there were so many amazing musicians in this that circle, and that I was even somewhere in the exterior of, on the perimeter of that, of hanging out with these people, was pretty amazing. But yeah, so Jack and John would always, they kind of always try to one up each other. And in 2000, I think it was 2008, John Mayer had asked Jack to be in his music video that they were filming out here. So Jack's in the Clarity video. And yeah, just kind of crazy. You never know, like, I mean, in college, I knew obviously he was super talented, but I had no idea that when I was, that same trip I went to France with and heard Somewhere Over the Rainbow, came home and it was like turned on the radio in the car and they're like, and that was John Mayer. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
I'd been gone for like 6 months and came home and, he was huge, blowing up. And so yeah, good for him, and, well deserved. And yeah.
That's crazy. And you said you went to go see him or something, right?
Yeah, it was like 2004. I went to the concert, and some people knew in town in Green Bay that I went to college with them, and so they invited me to go, and they had second row tickets right in the middle. And so after the show, I'm like the security guy. I'm like, will you tell John that Victoria's here? And he like wouldn't believe. I'm like, we just tell him Victoria is here, and he knew I was there because my friend was working lighting, and so yeah, we went back and said hi, and he looked exhausted because he'd been on the road working, playing arenas, and gosh, I can't even imagine the work that one gets in at that level.
Definitely. And just musicality just off the roof. And but hey, thanks for sharing. That's just a cool story.
There's
And
like famous, really famous people that I know from like a college or um, music stuff. Then
yeah,
there's really fame world, like James Hill and Jake and
yeah,
Taimat. So there's always but yeah, he's like pop world
that's just pretty cool just to know someone at that level. And
on the Go Go's.
hey, well, thanks for sharing all your stories. Really had a good time. Is there anything upcoming that coming this year that you're working on?
Yeah, I've got kind of a couple ideas for some albums. I've been writing a lot lately, so lots of music. It's just a matter of getting it together to record it. Most likely be recording here at home and then sending the tracks off to a producer to mix and kind of, you know, make it sound better than I can. Uh, but yeah, so I'm hoping to release a new album by the end of the year. And then some music with Jack too, and some videos, and just try to, it's always the name of the game is just keep creating. And for me, that means writing music and somehow getting it out there.
Yeah, no, right. And then where can everyone find you?
Well, I have a website, victoriavox.com, and then there's jackinthevox.com. And yeah, I do, socials and things, but probably my favorite is I also have a Patreon where people can support and kind of get a cool, music that I don't share. So mostly when I'm writing new songs, I will share it to my Patreon first.
Oh, okay, that's exclusive. Go check her out, everybody. Victoria Box,
Yeah, so
Patreon.
stuff before it is released, if ever. And but yeah, it's out there. There's lots of music from, I guess I have like 10 some albums of music out there over the years.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I hopefully we will see each other soon once
Yeah.
everything gets a little more less crazy.
So yeah, so you hang in there yourself.
Sounds good, Victoria. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.